It is Wednesday, April 23rd, and President Trump announcing shocking numbers this morning on just how well we're doing with tariffs. Stunning amounts of revenues being generated, much higher than expected. Also, an update on trade deal progress with China, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, releasing new figures showing the U.S. deficit now set to fall significantly in 2025 due to tariff revenues. Also, mainstream media losing their minds this morning over new alternative media coverage at the White House. We're going to show you this. And Trump telling Ukraine today, you are on your own, telling Volodymyr Zelensky, this is your one chance to save what's left of your country. And more stories as well from around the country, including an update on the Epstein files. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So it's been 2 weeks since Trump's baseline tariffs went into effect. Huge dollars being collected from the U.S. Customs Service. Estimates were floated beforehand that these tariffs would bring in around $300 to $600 billion a year in additional revenues. Those were the estimates. Well, they've been blown out of the water. Trump announcing that during the Biden administration, we were losing $2 trillion a year from bad trade policies. That's $5 billion a day. Think about that. On a daily basis, each and every day, the U.S. was losing $5 billion a day. We had a $5 billion deficit each day. Thanks to Trump's tariffs, his 10% base tariff and the 25% auto tariff, 25% steel and aluminum tariff, the daily deficit has almost been erased, brought down to a very low number. Watch.
Mr. President, on China, your press secretary has suggested that some progress is being made. Are negotiations actively underway? And do you agree with Secretary Bessent, who has suggested that the current standoff with China is not sustainable?
We're doing fine with China. We're doing fine with I think almost every country. Everybody wants to have involvement with the United States. As you know, we were losing $5 billion a day during the Biden administration, during that last year, was a horror show what they were doing on trade. $5 billion a day. And now we have it down to a very low number because we're getting 25% from the automobile industry, from autos. We're getting 25% for steel, 25% for aluminum, and we're getting the baseline of 10%. And think of it, we're losing almost $2 trillion on trade, and those days are gone.
Meanwhile, trade deals are progressing. The Wall Street Journal reporting Trump softening his position on China, considering lowering his universal tariff rate from 145% down to 50 or 60%. The market ripping higher on this news. The media trying to paint Trump into this corner, painting a lose-lose type narrative. If he backs off his hawkish stance with China, it means he caved. If he keeps his hawkish stance, it means he's tanking the stock market and the economy.
Futures have been pointing higher. I did it again, going the wrong way. Futures have been pointing higher all throughout the morning. Investors breathing a sigh of relief, as it's not just Bessent. You're also hearing it from President Trump, him hinting at a potential U-turn on his tariffs against China, saying essentially he's going to play nice with China now. That shift getting a lot of notice, a lot of places, including on Chinese social media this morning, with the hashtag Trump chickened out trending with millions of views.
That Wall Street Journal story, complete fake news. Trump confirming there will be no unilateral tariff cuts. Nothing has changed. Trump's negotiating. That's what's happening. He's doing what's needed to cut a true, fair deal with the Chinese. When asked this morning how talks are progressing thus far, Trump said, I think we're going to live happily ever after together and ideally work together. So I think it's going to work out very well. This coming as Trump's Department of Government Efficiency set to see big changes in the next few weeks. Elon Musk announcing last night in his Tesla earnings call that he'll be cutting down time at DOGE beginning in May, saying the large amount of work necessary to get the DOGE team in place largely done. Starting next month, my time allocation to DOGE will drop significantly. Listen to this.
Starting probably in next month, May, my time allocation to DOGE will drop significantly. I'll have to continue doing it for, I think, probably the remainder of the president's term, just to make sure that the waste and fraud that we stop does not come roaring back, which we'll do if it has the chance. So I think I'll continue to spend, a day or two per week on government matters for as long as the president would like me to do so, and as long as it is useful. But starting next month, I'll be allocating far more of my time to Tesla, and now that the major work of establishing the Department of Government Efficiency is done.
In another story, The View's Sonny Hostin suggests Trump's new $5,000 baby bonus concept is racially motivated, intended only to increase the white race. You can't make this up. We reported on Trump's plan to help all new American mothers in yesterday's broadcast, something Sonny Hostin clearly not a fan of. This lady's quickly becoming the dumbest person on television. Roll the tape.
Because when I look at something like this, these proposals, I want to know why, and I want to know who's making them. And so when I looked into that, they're saying that the U.S. birth rate is declining. However, in 2024, there was a 1% increase in U.S. births. But that increase was with Hispanic mothers and Asian mothers. So they don't seem to be concerned about that increase. They seem to be more concerned about a decrease in other populations.
Say it.
No, I think I said enough.
It's not based on that.
And so, well, it's just based on a study. And so the other thing
but
I will.
Have they said that anywhere? I mean, I feel like you have to be fair.
It's just fair to who? It's just a.
Have they said that this is to target only white families?
Oh, I didn't say that.
We
have
to
read between the lines. I just gave the stats.
Yeah, but it's about economics. They're wanting people to pay in.
I'm just giving.
Trump's plan's geared toward increasing the birth rate of this country. It's got nothing to do with race. It's got nothing to do with helping one race over the other. It's got to do with promoting the nuclear family and increasing America's birth rate, which is in free fall. This trend's been persisting for decades, but in recent years, since COVID, gotta ask why since COVID, but since then, reached a new historic low, less than 55 births for every 1,000 women, the lowest in over 1,000 years. In another story, political commentator Tim Pool got to ask the first question at the White House press briefing yesterday, opening the briefing by calling out the entire room of media reporters who, were seething as this question was being asked. Tim asking Carolyn Levitt if she has plans to expand access to even more alternative media companies, saying many of these news organizations represented here have marched in lockstep on false narratives such as the Very Fine People hoax, the Covington smear, and now the Maryland Man hoax. Watch this, then we'll show you the reaction from corporate media losing their minds. Watch.
Many of the news organizations that are represented in this room have marched in lockstep on false narratives, such as the Very Fine People hoax, the Covington smear, and now what's being called the Maryland Man hoax, where an MS-13 gang member adjudicated by two different judges, I believe, is just simply being referred to as a Maryland man over and over again. Now, in an effort from the White House to expand access to new companies, you've created this new media seat. So I'm wondering if you can comment on, following this expansion, you've had numerous outlets disparage the companies that you've had sit here, as well as the reporters. I'm wondering if you could comment on the unprofessional behavior, as well as elaborate if there's any plans to expand access to new companies.
Sure. Well,
I'm so happy you mentioned the Very Fine People hoax. That has to go down as one of the most dishonest media stories of Trump's first term, mostly because of how much it stuck, how well it stuck in people's minds, even though it was fake, false. The media reaction yesterday following this briefing, madness. All day long, corporate media losing their minds over Tim Pool being given the honor to ask the very first question and even be in the room with who mainstream media considers real reporters. Watch what happened on CNN after this. One of their panelists referring to Tim as a freak, referring to anyone in alternative media, calling all of us freaks. Watch.
The problem is that the right wing, hello, Scott, has taken advantage of this situation, I think, quite cleverly, quite wisely. They've played into a weakness.
What situation?
The situation of media being under attack. And so they've created a situation where...
You've almost got it. Keep going. What the right wing has taken advantage of is finally the American people saying enough is enough. They're tired of feeling like the mass media screens out one viewpoint versus another in political coverage. They're tired of media institutions favoring one party over another. They're tired of narratives over factual stories. If I had any advice for 60 Minutes or anybody else, it would be just cover the news and try to be fair about it and stop putting your finger on the scale, especially during
you're talking about the old mass media myth that you could have this thing that was in the middle, the Walter Cronkite saying, that's the way it is, when it wasn't for many Americans the way it was, when people were pissed off.
People back in those days trusted the media, didn't they?
No, they just couldn't be heard because there was no way. Now we have the internet.
Look at the Gallup polling. It was here, and now it's here. It's fallen off of a cliff.
Yeah, we do have that Gallup polling about trust in media, and now, as in recent years, and let's be honest, Scott, a lot of this is driven by the rhetoric on your side of the aisle.
You think it's driven by the rhetoric and not the performance?
Absolutely.
But my point is this. Yes. If you're CBS or any other news outlet, the reason that you have lost trust ought to be obvious to you, and the way to fix it also ought to be obvious to you, and it has nothing to do with Donald Trump and everything to do with the product. Just try to make a better product that appeals to more people, and the way you appeal to more people is by not crapping on half or more than half of the country because of their values and political viewpoints.
I think that is...
What you'd end up with in that press room then is, and these are my words, the freak show that Trump wants. Trump tries to devalue media. Why should we value his freak show there? Leave it to the freaks.
I think calling them freaks.
I don't think there's any disagreement on that, by the way.
I mean, he called these new media sources the freak show. They're not freaks. They have audiences.
Some of them are.
They have audiences, and there's a reason that they're thriving is because people are starved for information that they think they can trust. They're not freaks. They're filling a need in this country, in my opinion.
This, as recent polling indicates, trust in mainstream media in the U.S. specifically at all-time lows. A new YouGov poll showing only 29% of Americans have a fair amount of trust in the media to state facts fully, accurately, and fairly. 26% having no trust at all, 41% having not very much trust. And the Trump administration opening the briefing room up to alternative media, smartest thing they could have done. In another story, Trump excoriating Ukraine's president this morning for rejecting Crimea proposal for peace. President Trump taking to Truth Social, slamming Volodymyr Zelensky, saying if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a single shot being fired? And he can have peace, or he can fight for another 3 years before losing his entire country. The White House this week making it clear, crystal clear, they are ready to walk away from this, ready to leave the peace process if both sides aren't willing and ready. All the pressure appearing, though, to be on Kyiv. Vice President Vance doubling down on calling out Zelensky, making it clear this is your one shot, your one chance to have peace or risk losing your country entirely. Watch.
At this point, based on where negotiations are, what do you think is next in that process? And do you think that the U.S. should still hang on and take part in those negotiations?
Well, I'm going to echo something Secretary Rubio said, which is, look, we've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. We've engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy, of on-the-ground work. We've really tried to understand things from the perspective of both the Ukrainians and the Russians. What do Ukrainians care the most about? What do the Russians care the most about? And I think that we've put together a very fair proposal. We're going to see if the Europeans, the Russians, and the Ukrainians are ultimately able to get this thing over the finish line. Again, I feel pretty optimistic about it. I think everybody has been negotiating in good faith, but it's now time, I think, to take if not the final step, one of the final steps, which is at a broad level, the party saying we're going to stop the killing, we're going to freeze the territorial lines at some level close to where they are today, and we're going to actually put in place the kind of long-term diplomatic settlement that hopefully will lead to long-term peace.
In another story, where are the Epstein files we've been promised? It's been almost 2 months since Pam Bondi and Kash Patel joined the Trump administration, almost 2 months of promises made that we'll see full and complete transparency, and so far, nothing, nada, crickets. President Trump being asked about it this morning, saying he doesn't know where they are, but he's going to find out. He's going to call up Pam Bondi and find out what in the world is taking so long. Roll the tape.
When can we expect the Epstein documents to be released? The rest of them.
Which documents?
The Epstein files.
I don't know. I'll speak to the Attorney General about that. I really don't know. I know that we've done the RFK. The Kennedy, Martin Luther King is out there very shortly, so we'll find out. But we've really announced we're doing them in full transparency. You know, when we did JFK, people were saying, "Oh, maybe it wasn't all; it was all," and people actually went up to the office and they looked at some things that were, you know, not really easily available, and they were amazed that we gave it all. And I don't know if it solved any problems for people. People still have questions one way or the other, but that I'm not. But 100% of all of these documents are being delivered.
And right after this happened, guess who coincidentally announces their retirement? Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, announcing today he will not be running for re-election. The same member of the Senate leadership who voted in committee to not release the Epstein list 2 years ago. Good riddance. Your retirement couldn't come soon enough. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.